Our next topic is transmission of zoonoses. First, there is routes of transmission or modes of transmission. There are 5 direct and 5 indirect modes of transmission. So first we'll say what are those 5 direct modes of transmission. The mnemonic for this 5 is ABCD of direct mode of transmission. ABCD of direct transmission. AB is animal bite, C is contact with the soil, D is droplet infection, and direct means direct contact. Transmission means vertical transmission. So these are the ABCD of your direct mode of transmission. What are the examples with this AB, animal bite? And it is rabies. Or contact with soil, tetanus and ankylostomiasis, that is your hookworm infection, CLM, cutaneous larva migrans. Then droplet infection, tuberculosis, common cold, diphtheria. In case of direct contact, 3 examples: pox, leptospirosis, dermatophytes or dermatophytosis. Vertical transmission or through the placenta, transplacental or vertical transmission. 2 examples: toxoplasmosis and hepatitis B virus. So these are your 5 direct route of transmission or modes of transmission, and this is their ABCD of direct transmission. So after these 5 direct transmission modes, we have 5 indirect transmission mode. What are those 5 indirect mode of transmission? First is uncleaned hand and fingers. Unclean hands and fingers. These are the 4 examples. Triple SC. S for streptococcus, here salmonellosis and staphylococcus, and C for colibacillosis, that is E. coli. So these indirect modes are the triple SC. Then fomite bone transmission, STD, skin infection, typhoid fever and diphtheria. Next is airborne transmission, ABT. These are through the dust particles or droplet nuclei. Droplet nuclei, 2 example, tuberculosis and Q fever. Through the dust particles, fungal spore and streptococcal infection. So in indirect mode, unclean hand and fingers, fomite bone transmission, airborne transmission. Next is vehicle bone transmission. That could be through water, blood, meat, milk, organs and fish. Water or blood. Water example is hepatitis A virus. B for blood, hepatitis B virus. And organ, cytomegalovirus, CMV in kidney transplant. Then meat and milk bone. Meat bone, Trichinella spiralis and salmonella. Milk, tuberculosis and brucellosis. Fish, VPH and Diphyllobothrium latum. VPH is Vibrio parahemolyticus. So these are your vehicle bone 6 type of mode of transmission. Then the most important is the vector bone transmission. It is of further 4 subtypes: propagative, cyclodevelopmental, cyclopropagative and trans-ovarian transmission. The example here is tick-borne encephalitis. So we'll discuss these 3, which are the vector borne, and these are the biological transmission. These are the biological transmission. So vector borne is biological as well as it is mechanical. Mechanical transmission. So in case of biological transmission, there are four categories. First is propagative. Propagative means multiply. This is the causative agent which enter into the vector and comes out. So propagative means multiplication. One enters and multiples come out of the vector. This is known as multiplication or propagation. Then development. Here one enter into the mosquito, that is vector, and only one comes out. So this is 1 and this is also 1. So here size or growth is same, means there is no development, only the numbers are increased. So one agent or pathogen enter into the vector, that is the mosquito, and multiple comes out, and they are of same size, means their number are increased. In development, one enter and one comes out, but the difference is in size. There is development, there is growth of this pathogen. In case of cyclopropagative, both event, that is multiplication as well as development, occur. It means one enter into the vector and multiple comes out with the growth. So these are three types of biological transmission in the body of vector. Then their examples. So the example of this propagative is from the P and this Y. P for plague and this Y means yellow fever. Then developmental, D for dirofilaria. D for dirofilaria, in which the larval stage is known as microfilaria. Dirofilaria, and the vector is mosquito. And in case of this cyclopropagative, vector is again mosquito, and this P is the plasmodium. This P is the plasmodium. So these are the example of propagative is plague and yellow fever. In this case, in case of plague, vector is the rat flea, and in this case yellow fever, the vector is the mosquito. Which mosquito? That is the Aedes mosquito. And in case of this dirofilaria, that is larval stage microfilaria, vector is mosquito. And in cyclopropagative, where both multiplication and development both take place, vector is mosquito, that is Anopheles. Mosquito name is Anopheles, and the agent is the plasmodium, that is your malarial parasite. So these are the biological transmission, and the fourth one is through the transovarian or vertical transmission. Example, tick-borne encephalitis. And then there is mechanical transmission. In case of mechanical transmission, there is no multiplication and there is no development. Example, anthrax, Mechanical transmission, it is not anthrax, this is amoebiasis and cholera, and number 3 is serum hepatitis. Serum hepatitis. So these are the 3 examples where there is no multiplication, no development, only the physical transmission of the agent like amoebiasis, cholera or serum hepatitis. So these comes under mechanical transmission. And in biological transmission, there are 3 categories. So this is all about the modes of transmission, 5 direct mode and 5 indirect mode. Then ABCD of the direct transmission, and then out of this indirect mode, the most important is the vector-borne transmission, and in which the most important for MCQ point of view is biological transmission, where propagative 2 example, plague and yellow fever. Cyclodevelopment 1 example, that is Dirophilaria, whose larval form microflaria in the mosquito, and cyclopropagative is Plasmodium in the Anopheles. So this is all about modes of transmission topic. So after modes of transmission cycle, there are three types of transmission cycle. Number 1, that is sylvatic cycle, synanthropic and human cycle. Sylvatic cycle, sylvatic means role of wild animals. Here the pathogen occur and propagate in wild animals. In synanthropic cycle, pathogens occur and propagate in domestic animals via synanthropic animals. Synanthropic animals means rodents, birds, lizards, which lives in the vicinity of human being in their area. Next is human cycle. Here pathogen propagate from human to human and human to animal. So sylvatic cycle, the key point here is wild animal, here domestic animal, and here man. So this is the forest area. If man and domestic animal, they enter into the forest, they get exposed to infection. What kind of infection they get exposed to? Number 1, KFD, Castor forest disease, and monkeypox. So these diseases, they circulate or transmit within the wild animals. The pathogen of this KFD and monkeypox propagate in wild animals. But if human being and domestic animal, they enter the forest area, then these agent or they get the exposure from the KFD or monkeypox. In synanthropic cycle, plague and tularemia. These 2 diseases, they involve role of synanthropic animals like rodents, that is rat in case of plague, and tularemia, that is your rabbit fever, and human cycle, that is from man to man and man to animal. So human type tuberculosis. So this is about the transmission cycle, one of wild animal, domestic animal, and man. Examples: KFD, monkeypox, plague, tularemia, human tuberculosis. Point 3 is role of ABCDE in the transmission of zoonosis. What is A? A is domestic animal, means role of the domestic animals in transmission of zoonosis. So domestic animals harbor many infectious diseases in subclinical form. So domestic animal, they harbor the agent or infectious disease in subclinical form. For example, pet animals or household pet, dog and cat. Dogs and cat. So subclinical form means cats, they are the reservoir for cat scratch disease and toxoplasmosis. These, they do not cause disease in the domestic animal, but they act as a reservoir. So cats act as a reservoir for cat scratch disease and toxoplasmosis. Dog for rabies, T. canis and leptospirosis. Toxocara canis and leptospirosis. Dogs and sheep. Example, hydatidosis. That is non-obligatory cyclozoonosis. So they are responsible for which kind of zoonosis? Non-obligatory cyclozoonosis. Dog and sheep. So these were the domestic animals. Then number 2, that is part B. Domiciliated animals. Domiciliated means rodents, rats, mice, bandicoot and honey badgers. These rodents, they are a reservoir for the following diseases like plague bacilli, leptospirosis, Q fever, tularemia, murine typhus and rabies. So they are the reservoir for these infectious agent. So point C, role of wild mammals in transmission of zoonosis. These wild mammals or wild animals, they act as a reservoir host for the arthropod-borne infections. Most important wild vertebrates which are involved in transmission of zoonosis, they are rats, mice and monkeys. Then zoonotic pathogens in wildlife. There are zoonotic pathogen means species and the disease they cause. The mnemonic here to remember the zoonotic pathogen of wildlife is www.flipkart.com or amazon.com. In these two, this is .com and these are the different names. So before this .com, what is common is the www. So the mnemonic is this www comes before .com. So before this .com, this www, it comes before .com. So with this mnemonic, www comes before .com. So these are the species and these are the zoonoses which are related with the wild mammals. First first is wild ungulate, Zoonosis sarcocystis. Mule, deer, bison and vapid. This comes under wild ungulate. Number 2, this one is wild birds, MSC. Mycobacterium avium, Salmonellosis and Campylobacter jejuni. These comes in wild birds, species and zoonosis. Wood mouse, Yersinia. So after this www, then before, B for bison, that is species. So in before, B is bison, that is tuberculosis and brucella. These two E you can cancel with each other. So what is left is F is farm deer, tuberculosis, field hares, leptolisteria, brucella and yersinia. R for raccoon and zoonosis is brucella. After this .com, C for captive animals which are kept in captivity like zoo animals, toxoplasmosis and leptospirosis. O is opossum, that is these are the species and this is the zoonosis. Opossum salmonellosis. M for monkey, monkeypox and yellow fever. So in wild and mammals, total 3 here and 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 and 3. There are 10 species and 10 zoonoses related with the wild mammals. Next is viruses, zoonotic viruses which affect wild animals and human. So these are the A, B, C, D, E, F, H and M, R. A for adenovirus of deer, B is bovine spongiform encephalopathy BSE, C for chikungunya and CCHF, Congo Crimean hemorrhagic fever, D for dengue, E for equine encephalitis venezuela and Japanese encephalitis. F is just like HIV, it is FIV, feline immunodeficiency virus. H is hantavirus. M morbillivirus, R rabies and rotavirus. So these are the zoonotic viruses which affect wild animals and humans. Next, the role of D in transmission of zoonosis. This D is your wild birds or migratory birds. Wild birds are the species and zoonosis is MSC, Mycobacterium avium, Campylobacter and this. So Mycobacterium avium, Salmonellosis and Campylobacter. Then fishes of black-headed gulls and swallows, Yersinia species. The most important MCQ is from the migratory birds. So migratory bird play very important role in the transmission of zoonosis. There are two examples. One is ticks of these diseases recovered from the birds which migrate between Africa and Europe or Africa and Asia. So ticks from the Q fever, tick typhus, CCHF and tularemia. These ticks were recovered from the migratory birds. And one more example is the KFD. So introduction of this KFD in India is because of the migratory birds and the ticks which they brought along with them. The MCQ for the ticks is Haemaphysalis spinifera. So because of this tick, there is a disease KFD. So this tick was brought into India with the migratory birds. The last part is E, that is cold-blooded animals, also known as poikilothermic animals. Their role in transmission of zoonosis. So out of these, like fishes, amphibians and reptiles, fish, frog, snakes, lizard and tortoise, from their intestine, what they have isolated, the salmonella. So salmonella is the most common, most studied zoonotic agent in cold-blooded animal. So this is your very important MCQ. That which of the following is most studied, most common zoonotic agent in cold-blooded animal? Answer is salmonella. So we'll start with the fish. In case of fishes, Aeromonas bacteria and Clostridial species are there, which are zoonotic. Clostridial botulinum type E, then Clostridium perfringens, Clostridium septicum and Clostridium sporogenes. These are the zoonotic in fishes. Then with the marine fish, there is one bacteria, Erysipelotrix insidiosa. Fish product, there are two bacteria related with the fish product, Listeria monocytogenes and Vibrio parahemolyticus. So this is related with the fish. In amphibia, frogs and toads. With the frog, in their intestine, salmonella is there. Then in reptiles, snakes, lizards and tortoise. With the snake, leptospira is associated, that is leptospirosis, and in the intestine, this salmonella is present. In lizard, leishmania, brucellosis, tularemia, 3 zoonotic agent. And with tortoise, most common is the salmonella. So overall, salmonella is the most common zoonotic agent of cold-blooded animals. And what are cold-blooded animals? They are fishes, amphibia and reptiles. And these are the diseases associated with these animals. So next topic is from the occupational zoonosis. There is one WHO expert committee on bacterial and viral zoonosis. This committee, it divided or categorized the occupational zoonotic into 7 categories, and that is based on the types of exposure. And the mnemonics for these 7 category is the CLEARS. CL for clinical and laboratory, E for epidemiology emergency, A for agriculture and animal product manufacturer, R for recreational, S for sylvan and campestral. So these are the 7 categories based on the types of exposure occupational group, and bacterial and viral zoonosis are categorized in 7 categories. So we'll discuss their examples and the exposure group. Who are the exposure groups which comes in these 7 categories? So these are the 7 categories with the mnemonic CLEARS. CL for your clinical and laboratory, E for epidemiological and emergency, A for agricultural and animal product manufacturer, R recreational, S for sylvan and campestral. These are the exposure group and these are the examples. Laboratory means lab workers, nurses, physician in the clinic. They are exposed to tuberculosis and brucella. Epidemiological, public health workers who work with the epidemiological survey and studies, and veterinarians. They are exposed to JE, yellow fever and plague. Emergency means refugees, disaster victims. They are exposed to plague and leptospirosis. Agricultural means the farmers, veterinary inspectors and VLDA. They are exposed for this leptospirosis, mostly brucella also, Q fever and bovine tuberculosis. Animal product manufacturer like meat inspector, butchers, they are usually exposed to anthrax, tetanus and tularemia. Recreational means pet owners, and in case of zoological parks, zookeepers, veterinarians, they are exposed to toxoplasmosis, cetacosis and campylobacteria. Last is sylvan and campestral, which is related with the forest. Here the working staff is wildlife workers and some tourists which enter into the forest area, hunters, foresters. They are mostly exposed to KFD and rabies. So these are the 7 categories. These are the exposure groups which works in this category, and these are the zoonotic example. So this ends our second lecture on zoonotic diseases.
Subscribe for more content.